technology expert Burton Kelso here with another tech tip to help you get the most out of the technology in your life. Today we're talking about the GoDaddy breach. Unless you've been living in a cave, you probably already know that GoDaddy was breached. And unfortunately, it's not the first time GoDaddy's been breached. It's kind of a lax of responsibility from probably what's considered the world's largest web hosting company out there. 1.2 million usernames were leaked onto the dark web, username and passwords, which for some of you who aren't watching or using GoDaddy, probably not a big deal. In fact, if you saw the title, if you're not using GoDaddy, why are you watching this video anyway? Could be because of my handsome face and you just like seeing me appear on YouTube and other places where this is being streamed. But it really does have a major effect if you even have an inkling that either you're using GoDaddy or a company that you work with is using GoDaddy to host your personal or corporate website. So this has major implications, and I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more coverage because of the nature of this breach. Now, before you think that the whole GoDaddy system was breached by cyber criminals, it's only a small portion of the services they offer. GoDaddy offers many services such as a do-it-yourself web design tool. They team up with Microsoft to provide a GoDaddy hybrid of Office 365, and they also include a WordPress version of GoDaddy. I like how that's blocked out by the captions. Let's move that down for a second. There you can see the whole GoDaddy website logo. But anyway, WordPress was the area that was affected with GoDaddy because there was a lot of people that use WordPress to design their websites, and that area was affected. And not only was the GoDaddy WordPress section affected, third-party vendors who utilize GoDaddy as their back-end for WordPress sites was affected too. And let's go through these real quick so that you can understand, because before I go through the list, you have to understand that a lot of IT deals with third-party vendors, and sometimes these third-party vendors are the downfall of companies if the third-party vendor suffers a data breach. In GoDaddy's instance, they are the primary provider, and there are other companies that rely on them to keep their services safe and secure so that they can offer GoDaddy as a service for web design tools. So let's go through the list here. And one of the companies affected was 123-Reg, which is a company based out of the UK. Went the wrong way on that one. Domain Factory, which is another company that uses GoDaddy services to satisfy its customers. There's Heart Internet, another web company that uses GoDaddy on the back end. And then there's TSO Host, which is another website company that uses GoDaddy on the back end. And then there's also Host Europe. Now, why am I showing these companies? Because these may be companies that you're working with that you're thinking they have their own platform, but actually it is GoDaddy on the back end. One final company to note is Media Temple, which is another web hosting site that uses GoDaddy on the back end. So as you can see, this has far-reaching implications when it comes to your website and the company that you work with as far as the information that's leaked out. And at 1.2 million email addresses and usernames and other information, that's a big deal because it can lead to a lot of things when it comes to your website. Now, one of the most, let's step back a minute. So again, in this day and age, as far as websites are concerned, many people, especially small businesses, are turning to cookie cutter websites like GoDaddy. There's Wix, there's GoDaddy, there's Squarespace. Now, these sites are excellent as far as a DIY or do-it-yourself solution for creating a website, especially if you're trying to create one on a solopreneur budget or a small business budget. But the challenge when you're using cookie cutter sites such as GoDaddy or Wix or Squarespace is the simple fact that all it takes is a username and password for a criminal to get access to your website. And there's many things that they can do with your website, but these are the most important threats that you should worry about. Number one would be they can install malicious code on your website. Now, that is a challenge because malicious code on your website means that a cyber criminal can actually go in and make it that your website is set up to steal the information of websites or of your website and the information of the viewers of that website and use it for their own means. And you won't even know that it's happening because it's built into the code of your website. Now, one of the good things about the do-it-yourself or the cookie cutter website tools is that you can install HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language coding, in that cookie cutter website. Now, these tools are designed for web designers that know a little bit of HTML, but still at the same time they want a quick and easy way to do a website. Now, criminals can install HTML coding in your website without you knowing it, so that is one of the major threats that can definitely happen when criminals get access to GoDaddy or other do-it-yourself website information. The next would be credential stuffing. I can't believe the text said Stephanie. It's actually credential stuffing, like what you had for Thanksgiving, except it's not full of keys and locks. It's a process that cyber criminals use in order to get, or when they access credentials to log into your online accounts. So if criminals were able to access your credentials from one website, they may use those credentials to log into other websites that you may own, giving them access to online accounts such as social media and other things, which criminals will target, especially if it's a corporate or a solopreneur website. So if you're using the same username and password for all of those sites, it'd be easy for a criminal to go into your sites and do bad things. Now, obviously, the next threat with this GoDaddy breach is the threat of phishing. Now, phishing is probably one of the more primary ways that criminals get access to information. You get an email saying that there is a problem with an account. I think you all know where this goes. But anyway, it comes from a trusted source, and you give information because you think the legitimate, or you believe in the legitimacy of the email. Well, you can't trust phishing schemes, but the more of these large-scale breaches that occur, the more that you may become a victim of a phishing scheme, because we're all creatures of habit. And so our primary email that we use to log into sites, we're using it for everything, and it definitely will make it easier for criminals to target you. Another thing that criminals can do is put a virus in your site and make it less secure. So with viruses, criminals could conduct what's called drive-by hacking, where you visit a website or one of your customers or users goes to your website and it installs a virus on the customer's computer. Now, what relationship do you think you will have with your customer base if they visit your website and then they get infected? It's not going to have a good feeling with the customer. So it's kind of important that you understand and know if your GoDaddy site or your host is using GoDaddy to make sure that you're keeping your personal or your business safe for all of your customers to visit. And then finally, one of the things that can definitely happen with a breach in your GoDaddy site is that it can definitely mess with the SSL or the secure socket level or layer of your website, making it become an unsecure website. Now, how many people do you think are going to visit your website if they realize that it's an unsecure website? And Google and other websites out there know if your site is not secure. So it's important that you take steps to ensure that your GoDaddy credentials are safe and secure, and that you analyze your website to make sure that it's not going to harm anybody who visits your website. Now, unfortunately, with these custom built websites that most, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of web hosts are providing, it's not a simple matter of like the old days where you have a backup of your website and you can just restore your website from backup. You're hoping your hosting company is able to do that. But with these new custom built websites, that ain't happening. So you need to make sure that you protect your websites at all costs, because if your site becomes infected, it can be a hard process for you to have to rebuild that website from scratch, or to pay a web provider to do that for you to make sure that your site is secure. Now, how in the heck can you keep your data safe in the midst of this GoDaddy breach? And to be honest with you, aren't you tired of these large-scale data breaches that are occurring? I know I am. It makes good content for video, but at the same time, it's got to stop somewhere. So here are Burton's steps as far as making sure that you're keeping your information safe. So number one would be to make sure you know what your vendor is using to design your website. Now, you may think that your web person is doing a heck of a job designing that website, but on the back end, it could be GoDaddy is the tool that they're actually using. And how would you know? Especially if you don't know anything about web design. So ask up front, what are you using to design my website? And as an individual with a website, or even if you're a small business, that is information that you need to know. Quite simply, if there's a data breach like this, you know to take steps to protect yourself to make sure that your information isn't compromised, and if make sure that your website isn't breached either. Another thing that you want to do, especially when it comes to vendors, is to make sure that the naughty list of vendors that are using GoDaddy that I showed earlier in this video, make sure that they are not using, or make sure that you're not using one of those companies, to ensure that you're covered in doing the things that you need to do in order to protect your data and your website. Now, my next tip is to change those passwords. Anytime there is a large-scale data breach, doesn't matter if you've been affected or not, change your password just to be safe and secure. So if you are using GoDaddy and you're thinking, man, I know I wasn't in that 1.2 million group of people that had their information leaked, you probably were, and you need to act like you were. So make sure that you get into the habit of changing passwords whenever there is a large-scale data breach. Another thing that you should do is to make sure that you change your username. One of the things that happen with these custom websites, especially with GoDaddy, is that you use a username which is usually your email address. So if you switch to an unknown email address, or just even using a free Google email address that no one knows about as your login for your GoDaddy site, make sure that you change it to a username or an email address if you use that to sign in that no one's going to know. Now, if it's an email that you're setting up, if you change it to some obscure email that no one knows about, if there is a data breach, it puts your information less at risk, because normally what happens with those emails is that criminals are going to send out phishing schemes to those exposed email addresses, or they may gather them and compare with the information that's already on the dark web to see if they can target you or create a custom phishing scheme that's directed to you. So use unknown emails to make sure that your information is safe and secure. Now, I probably don't need to throw this out there, but I'm going to anyway, because as a designer of websites, I'm not going to say which one I am, but I don't use HTML, but you might want to consider just hiring a professional to design your website in HTML. Now, keep in mind with this GoDaddy data breach, it does not mean that because your website is hosted with GoDaddy, It doesn't mean that it was actually designed with the tools built into GoDaddy. It could simply mean that someone built your website and it's hosted on GoDaddy. Now, none of those websites are affected. It's mainly the ones that were designed with the WordPress login that those accounts were affected, and people who may have had their website designed in GoDaddy with the web or the WordPress interface. You definitely need to take steps to ensure that your data is safe and that you're changing your usernames and passwords. So with that said, if you've got comments or questions about this another data breach, be sure to hit me up. You reach out to me on social media or email, anywhere. I'm all over the web. And also, if you're watching this video, make sure that you share this video with your friends. Be sure to like it, comment, and just make sure that you're sharing the good word and letting your friends know that you know an awesome tech guy who gives out the best advice on the internet. So with that said, I love technology and I've read all the manuals, and I'm serious about making technology fun and easy to use for everyone. So take care of yourself and do many things to make you smile, and thanks for watching.